Title IX at Trinity University. This training is mandatory for university employees and contains information that is helpful to Trinity volunteers, students, and others. Title IX, Texas laws related to sexual misconduct in higher education, Trinity's policy prohibiting sexual harassment and sexual misconduct, reporting, confidentiality, potential complainant and victim rights, retaliation, and supportive measures available at Trinity University. What is Title IX? This is the entire text of Title IX. Essentially, it prohibits sex discrimination in educational institutions that receive federal funding. This includes federal student financial aid, so it covers the vast majority of schools. While Title IX is a very short statute, court decisions and guidance and regulations from the U.S. Department of Education have given it a broad scope, covering sexual harassment and sexual violence. Schools are required to take action to eliminate the sexual harassment or sexual violence, prevent its recurrence, and address its effects. There are several laws, regulations, and policies that govern this, so let's take a look at how each one affects our university. In May of 2020, the Department of Education released regulations stating that Title IX covers incidents that take place after August 14, 2020, in the United States, and while an individual is participating in or attempting to participate in our educational program or activity. These regulations specifically allow schools to address incidents that do not fall within these parameters under other university policies or procedures. In addition, the regulations mandate that schools use a specific definition of sexual harassment, as well as federal crime definitions of prohibited conduct. We'll look at those next. There are also Texas laws relating to sexual misconduct, which apply to incidents in a broader geographical area and include mandatory reporting by employees. Texas law also mandates the use of federal crime definitions of prohibited conduct and includes a mandatory definition of sexual harassment that is different from the federal regulations. Trinity University policy complies with both state and federal requirements and also protects members of our campus community regardless of where an incident took place, as long as at least one party is affiliated with Trinity. So what does all of this mean for the Trinity University community? The university will respond to all reports of sexual harassment and sexual misconduct, regardless of whether the acts took place on or off campus, and will take these reports seriously. Even though there are different procedural requirements, depending on whether the report turns out to allege Title IX prohibited conduct or university prohibited conduct, you don't have to worry about determining which course a case will follow. The Title IX coordinator and investigators will do that. The way you can help is by reporting sexual harassment and sexual misconduct, so individuals can be informed of their rights and resources that are available to them. You can also help by supporting members of our community who have experienced or are being accused of doing these things. Here you will see the definitions of sexual harassment required by Title IX regulations and the one required by Texas law. It's important to note that the Title IX standard is higher than the standard included in Texas law and Trinity policy. Title IX prohibits behavior that is so severe, pervasive, and objectionably offensive that it effectively denies someone's ability to access our educational program or activity. Texas and Trinity prohibit behavior that is severe, persistent, or pervasive and interferes with a student's ability to participate in or benefit from our educational programs or activities. Sexual assault means an offense that meets the definition of rape, fondling, incest, statutory rape, non-consensual sodomy, or sexual assault with an object. For specific definitions of each of these, please refer to the Trinity policy. Dating violence means violence committed by a person who is or has been in a social relationship of a romantic or intimate nature with the victim and includes but is not limited to sexual or physical abuse or the threat of such abuse, and does not include acts covered under the definition of domestic violence. Trinity's policy also prohibits domestic violence, which refers to conduct between individuals who are married or co-parenting. For specific definitions of each of these, please refer to the Trinity policy. Stalking is defined as engaging in a course of conduct directed at a specific person that would cause a reasonable person to fear for their safety or the safety of others, or suffer substantial emotional distress. As with the definitions of sexual harassment, what conduct is prohibited under federal law, state law, and university policy are different. Trinity policy is the most comprehensive. Our policy provides information about options and obligations for reporting sexual harassment and sexual misconduct, as well as information about preservation of evidence, rights, resources, our response to reports, and the investigation and resolution of reports and complaints. This is a broad overview of how Trinity will respond to a report under this policy. It's important to note that a report is not the same thing as a complaint. When the Title IX coordinator receives a report alleging sexual harassment or sexual misconduct, they or their designee will promptly contact the person who has reportedly been subjected to the bad behavior and offer to meet with them to provide information about their rights under their policy and supportive measures and resources that are available to them, both on and off campus. We will ask how they would like us to proceed. There's a broad range of administrative responses, including no response, only accessing resources, informal resolution, or filing a formal complaint. If the individual indicates they do not want to file a formal complaint, the university will comply with their wishes unless it appears that there is a danger to the campus community. So how do you make a report?
Trinity University policy, procedures, and information on sexual misconduct can be found online by searching sexual misconduct in the search bar. Here, you can access the policy, Title IX procedures, ways to report, and the contact information for the Title IX coordinator, Miranda-Clark.
If an employee observes or learns of an incident of sexual harassment or sexual misconduct in the course and scope of their employment, the vast majority must report this information to the Title IX coordinator promptly. They are required to disclose all of the information they know. There are 4 categories of employees who are exempt from mandatory reporting, and we will discuss these after we talk about the reporting requirements. You must report if you reasonably believe you have information about an incident of the types listed here, if the incident was committed by or against someone who is a Trinity student, employee, or third-party contractor, such as our food service, custodial, and bookstore employees. For example, Stacy, an accountant in the business office, is out to eat at a restaurant with friends on a Saturday evening. During this non-work dinner, the accountant overhears someone from the next table talking about working at your institution and being groped by their supervisor. Stacy does not recognize the speaker and is unsure if they are a student or employee. Does she have to report to the Title IX coordinator? No. Texas law would not require that Stacy report this information because she was engaged in a personal activity at the time and was not performing duties to further the institution's interests. Employees are not required to report information received when they are not acting in the course and scope of their employment, or information about incidents that took place at a time when none of the individuals involved were affiliated with Trinity. However, we encourage you to report so that we can provide information on rights and resources to the identified parties. For example, a part-time faculty member shares with their department chair that a tenured faculty member in the department made unwanted sexual advances. The part-time faculty member asks the department chair to keep the concern anonymous. Can the department chair withhold the part-time faculty member's name when making the report to the Title IX coordinator? No. The department chair must share all information known to them with the Title IX coordinator. The department chair should indicate that the part-time faculty member wishes to remain anonymous, and the Title IX coordinator will take that into account in moving forward with the matter. We want to make sure that the part-time faculty member receives information about their right to file a complaint and information about supportive measures available to them. One last example. Professor Crane receives an email from a student explaining that they missed class because they were attacked by an ex. Professor Crane contacts the Title IX coordinator asking if he needs to report, as there were very few details included in the student's email. The professor explains that they are not sure of when or where the attack happened, or if the ex is a student at their institution. Professor Crane should report regardless of when or where this incident occurred, as it involves a current Trinity student. Even if there are very few details, Professor Crane should include all of them. We want to make sure that the student receives information about supportive measures available from Trinity and other sources. If the accused is affiliated with Trinity, we also want to make sure that the student receives information about the right to file a complaint. Knowing what to report is of the utmost importance. Employees should be prepared to report all information promptly. Anything you witness, someone discloses to you, someone tells you about, you overhear, or are otherwise made aware of must be shared with the Title IX coordinator. You must report all information related to the incident that is known to you, regardless of when or where the incident took place. This is so that we can provide supportive measures to the individual harmed and accurately track potential dangers to our campus community. We may have already received reports about the accused engaging in similar behavior with someone else. Multiple reports might mean that we need to act to prevent the same thing from happening again. Other than reporting this incident to the Title IX coordinator, please keep the identity of the individuals involved confidential. There is one exception. If incidents are disclosed at a sexual harassment, sexual assault, dating violence, or stalking public awareness event sponsored by Trinity or by a student organization affiliated with Trinity, you do not have to report. There are a few exemptions to this duty to report. They are student employees except for resident assistants. At Trinity University, RAs are required to report due to the responsibilities of their position. Victims of prohibited conduct are not required to report what happened to them. Employees are not required to report information about an incident that's disclosed at a public awareness event on sexual harassment or other prohibited conduct. Confidential resources are employees who have been designated as persons with whom students may speak confidentially. They must report only the type of incident they are aware of and cannot disclose more information without the consent of the person involved. Confidential resources at Trinity University include licensed professional counselors, healthcare providers, clergy, legal counselors, and athletic trainers. Confidential resources are required to report the type of prohibited conduct they learn of, but they cannot share any other information without the victim's consent. If you are a confidential resource, you must report each incident to the Title IX coordinator by type. It may not include any other information. The employee may not report information that would violate a student's expectation of privacy unless the employee is required to report information under another law, such as the obligation to report child or elderly abuse. For details about what and how to report, refer to the policy. However, if someone designated as a confidential resource receives information about a reportable incident while not working in a situation where the conversation is covered by privilege, they must report all information known just as any other employee would. For example, if someone makes a disclosure to a counselor, medical provider, or athletic trainer outside of the professional or doctor-patient relationship, that conversation is not confidential.
You can report at the bottom of any Trinity University website page by clicking on Report Discrimination and Sexual Misconduct or Report Misconduct. Reports may be made online to the Trinity's Title IX coordinator by clicking the form to fill out the details of the report. The form includes background information, involved parties, information regarding the incident, in which we ask for as much detail as possible, and any supporting documentation.
Confidentiality. The identity of the following individuals is considered confidential: alleged victims of prohibited conduct, the person who reported an incident of prohibited conduct, someone who sought guidance or support concerning an incident from the university, someone who participated in the investigation or adjudication of an incident, and someone who is alleged to have committed or assisted in the commission of prohibited conduct if, after completing an investigation, the institution determined that the report was unfounded or without merit. The identity of these individuals is not subject to disclosure under the Public Information Act and may only be disclosed for the purposes of an investigation of the report, to provide supportive measures, to law enforcement to conduct a criminal investigation of the report, to a healthcare provider in an emergency situation as determined by Trinity University, or if the confidentiality is waived in writing. A victim may request that the institution not investigate the reported incident. Trinity University may have an obligation to investigate regardless of this request, depending on the seriousness of the allegation, the existence of other reports, the risk of harm to others, or any other relevant factors. The decision regarding whether to investigate must be conveyed to the victim. If the university does not investigate, it must take reasonable steps as necessary to protect the health and safety of the community in relation to the alleged incident, consistent with the law and institutional policy. If a formal complaint is filed, complainants and respondents have the same rights. These include the right to have the advisor of their choice, the right to present and review evidence, the right to name potential witnesses, the right to review a draft report, and the right to appeal a decision, among others, as outlined in the university policy, and the right to appeal a decision, among others, as outlined in the university policy. Trinity University shall take reasonable steps to ensure that complainants and respondents are protected from retaliation and harassment during the disciplinary process. Retaliation against a person who engages in protected activity under this policy is prohibited. Protected activity under this policy includes, but is not limited to, reporting an incident that may implicate this policy, supporting a complainant or respondent, providing information relevant to an investigation, or otherwise participating in the investigation, resolution, or adjudication process, and acting in good faith to oppose conduct that constitutes a violation of this policy. Retaliation includes, but is not limited to, any behavior, adverse action, treatment, or condition that intimidates, threatens, coerces, discriminates against, or is taken against a person for the purpose of interfering with their rights under this policy or otherwise participating under this policy. Trinity may also not discipline or discriminate against an employee or student who in good faith reports an incident of prohibited conduct and cooperates with the investigation, disciplinary process, or judicial proceeding related to the report. This provision does not include a person who perpetuated or assisted in the perpetuation of an act of prohibited conduct. There are several different possible consequences for failing to report or falsifying a report. These include employment consequences, such as mandatory termination. If we receive a report that an employee has failed to report as required, Trinity University must conduct an investigation through the faculty staff disciplinary process to determine whether the employee committed the offense of failure to report. If it is determined that the employee did in fact commit this offense, termination is required. In addition to termination, the employee may be subject to civil and criminal consequences. Deliberately false and/or malicious accusations under this policy are a serious offense and will be subject to appropriate disciplinary action by Trinity University. This does not include allegations that are made in good faith, but are ultimately shown to be erroneous or do not result in a determination that the policy was violated. And just like failure to report, you can face criminal and civil liability for false allegations. A person acting in good faith who reports or cooperates in an investigation is immune from civil liability and criminal liability for offenses punishable by a fine only. Supportive measures are non-disciplinary and non-punitive individualized services offered as appropriate and as reasonably available. Supportive measures are intended to address the effects of sexual harassment and sexual misconduct and may include academic accommodations, housing and work accommodations, administrative no-contact orders, criminal trespass warnings, safety plans, and others. In addition, if a student is enrolled in the same class as their harasser or someone accusing them of sexual harassment or sexual misconduct, students may drop that course without academic penalty. Supportive measures are available to assist faculty, staff, and students relating to a reported matter, regardless of whether they are the complainant or respondent, and whether or not a formal complaint is filed. A healthy Title IX culture is everyone's responsibility. Reporting of sexual harassment and sexual misconduct is essential to keeping our campus commitment to excellence, integrity, and compassion. Trinity's policy prohibiting sexual harassment and sexual misconduct provides information about options and obligations for reporting, as well as information about rights, resources, response, investigation, and resolution of reports and complaints. If you have a report to make or questions to ask, contact me, Angela Miranda-Clark, your Title IX coordinator.